私はそんなことをしませんぞ。誓ってもいい。
となるとエヴァおばさんと南條先生のアリバイ合戦ってことになる。俺たちは二人とも怪しんでそれぞれを別々に監禁すればいいだけの話。
I mean, maybe the deaths of George, Natsuki, and Kraus should be confirmed by the survivors, and then we should think about alibis. But I get where Baylor is going with this. Whether we are talking about the three of them all dead, like out there, or they're still alive somehow, the point still stands. Somebody inside the guest house locked one or more windows or doors, like all that. Like they locked all of them after all three of them disappeared. Either one of them, like either one of the remaining survivors is the killer and went outside with the bodies and came back, or they could be just an accomplice and they locked the windows and doors, while the true murderer is still out there somewhere. I guess we shall see.
逆に言えば、このトリックはもっと生存者が多ければ有効かもしれないが、これだけ人数が減った状況下では大して有効ではないんだ。
No, in fact, there's a chance they could dig their own grave with it. It should have been more expedient to make it look like the culprit was outside, and to intentionally leave a door unlocked, or break a window.
もしこの失踪劇が今日の昼にでも起これば、俺は自信満々にこの説を発表しただろうよ。だが、この段階に至っては全然自信が持てないぜ。何なんだこいつは。一体何を意味してやがるんだ、この密室はよ。
やはりその。
なんだい、南條先生。思いつきでもいいから言ってくれよ。
Because Dr. Nanjo looked like he was trying to swallow his words, despite having thought of something. I urged him. After he refused several times, saying that it was just a foolish idea, he finally said it out loud.
上様、やはりこれは本当に魔女の仕業ではないのかと。
バカバカしい。魔女なんているわけがねえぜ。
魔女は私たちに訴えたいのです。人間にはできないことをやってのけるからこそ、自分を魔女だと認めさせたいに違いないのです。私はこのゲストハウス全体の密室からの失踪は、そういう魔女からのメッセージだと感じています。考えてはならないのです。意味なんてきっとないのです。私は恐ろしい。
As Dr. Nanjo shook with fear, he looked like he was trying to erase the fearsome thoughts that he kept imagining, one after the other. That's how he talks when he's in fear. When we went downstairs, Auntie Eva and Jessica were enraged, and were each making a lot of noise about leaving this place and searching for their respective families. It was a desire that naturally hits those who can no longer see their family. Auntie Eva told Dr. Nanjo and me to stay here, but I shook my head and started walking.
もう引きこもりはたくさんだぜ。俺も外の空気を吸いたくなってきた。
ああ、行くならさっさと行こうぜ。もうこんなところに閉じこもってるのは真っ平さ。早く父さんや母さんやジョージ兄さんを探しに行こ
う。The blood had all risen to Jessica's head. I hope it doesn't set off her asthma.
残りたい人は勝手に残ってればいいわ。とにかく私たちは表を探してくるわ。
南條先生はどうする？一人で留守番してるかい？
いえ、私もご一緒させてください。
The alternative was holding up if the alternative was holding up alone in the guest house, whose security was by no means guaranteed, it would be better to be in a danger zone as a group of 4 people. Hontieva was holding the gun. Moving separately from her was almost like asking to be made into the next victim. In this way, the 4 of us decided to leave the guest house. We barricaded ourselves in, saying we'd be safe if we did, and then lost 8 people. It was almost as though this had been nothing more than a holding cell from which the sacrifices could be killed one after the other. We removed the chain, locked the front door, and opened it. It was already pitch black out. While there were some lights outside which dimly lit the pathway, they didn't have enough power to illuminate the darkness that some suspicious person was likely to be hiding in.
行くわよ。遅れても知らないんだからね。
Still holding her gun, Hontieva dashed out without an umbrella. Jessica followed after her. After looking at each other, Dr. Nanjo and I chased after them. Well, we are gonna be reaching the end of the chess game soon enough. We're gonna find the bodies, and with that, all the steps in the epitaph will have been completed. We're definitely gonna have to do something, otherwise the game will end just like last time's. And Evatris will gain more power because of it. Ugh. I wonder what is happening in this mansion, on this island. Since yesterday, I've just been shut up in the cousins' room in the guest house with the rest of my cousins. So I don't know anything about what's been going on outside. Just what was happening in those places I don't know about. Outside the room, in the mansion, and on this island. Everything is occurring, everything is proceeding, and everything is ending without my knowing it. Somewhere in my heart, I had already begun to give up. Most likely, not one of us will see tomorrow morning. When the Seagulls cry, none shall be left alive. Yeah. Umineko no Naku Koro, I get it. But I refuse to have another defeat like this. Like, we have to fight back. More than before, Bellrum. If we are gonna go down yet again, we are gonna do so fighting. That and I certainly do not want to have another banquet. Like, the last one was too much for me. Jessica's woeful voice echoed throughout the rose garden. Perhaps it was the intuition of a person who lived on this island. After Jessica had looked in the rose garden, where Auntie Oza and Maria had fallen, seen nothing, she had gone to look in the arbor next. Normally, the arbor was probably a wonderful location to enjoy tea peacefully, while appreciating the roses on a good sunny day. Who knows? Maybe even Uncle Kraus and Aunt Nazi had their days where they relaxed and enjoyed the tea together there. In that arbor lay the bodies of Uncle Kraus and Aunt Nazi. Alright. Let's see the status of their bodies. Not many are left alive. It is interesting that we have Bato's profile here in a human side. Even though we technically do not have human Beatrice for this game. I mean, I guess you could say that since battle gave Evatris her power, she would no longer have power. But no, that was clearly it was clearly shown that she still has some powers as a witch. So yeah, it's a little odd. She's not. What does this say over here? The Golden Witch, who has lived for 1,000 years, she already surpassed the limits of humans, and it is said that she will appear in response to a human summons, just as the demons do. And like, what is the difference between these? I guess the difference is that this is talking about Beatrice as the chess player, whereas this profile of Beatrice talks about, you know, as if it's a ghost story of sorts, about the supposed golden witch that is hidden in this mansion, or something like that. I'm not really sure. Anyway, Shiromiya Natsu. Corpse discovered in a rose garden arbor. The cause of death is assumed to be strangulation by a quartz-shaped object. A stake-shaped weapon was sticking out of her calf. Why does the epitaph even need to be followed in the first place? A game? Why are their faces not shown? This is odd. I mean, yeah, they have their stake wounds, and clearly it shows that they have been strangulated by a quartz-shaped object, but what about the face? Stake-shaped weapon was sticking out of his thigh. If not for the epitaph, stakes wouldn't be needed. What a pain. At least they weren't drenched in the rain like Natsu and Maria had been. But there was no way I could say that out loud to Jessica at that moment. That was an odd trophy placement.
どうなんだ、南條先生。
考察ですな。ほら、ご覧なさい。首にくっきりと何か細いもので締めた跡が残っている。
だな、まさかこっちが主たる死因のわけはねえだろうよ。
The two stake-like weapons, decorated with an occult design, that were lying on the ground, had been found driven into Uncle Krause's thigh area, and near Natsu's calf. When we had found these sticking out of my parents' forehead and chest, we had decided to leave them exactly as they were for the police to preserve the crime scene. But Jessica no longer cared about such matters, and immediately pulled the stakes out of her parents' forsaken bodies.
これで頭、胸、腹、膝、足の5つをえぐられた死体が出たわけね。くそくそくそ、犯人め、殺してやる、殺してやる。第8の番まではこれで終わったわ。続くは第9の番なの。魔女はよみがえり、誰も生き残れはしない。上等だぜ。魔女がよみがえるってことは、犯人が堂々と姿を現してくれるってことなんだろう。何が誰も生き残れないだ。私が殺してやる。父さんと母さんを殺した犯人をこの手で絶対に殺してやる。
Jessica howled furiously, her emotions laid bare. To avoid being crushed by her grief, she could do nothing but resist it with anger.
まだジョージが見つかってないわ。ジェシカちゃんたちはここにいたければいるといい。私は屋敷へ行くわ。
エヴァさん、バラバラに行動してはいけない。みんなで一緒に行動しなくては危険です。
兄さんたちはもうどうしようもないわ。でもジョージはまだどこかで生きているかもしれない。 ここで時間を潰してる暇はないのよ。
As Auntie Eva screamed this, Jessica glared at her. Auntie Eva had no more time to bother about the dead. She was more concerned for the safety of her only son, who was yet to be seen.
ジェシカちゃんはここでお父さんとお母さんのそばにいるといい。私はちょっと屋敷に行ってくるわ。
You're kidding. And leaving them here without any guns to protect them, when the murderer could be anywhere ready to strike them when you are out there at the mansion. No. Like, everyone should stick together.
バトラ君も南條先生もここにいてくれていい。
After saying this and leaving no time for debate, Auntie Eva rushed out of the harbor. He gotta be kidding me. I called out for her to stop, but there was no way she would listen. However, by now, being alone in this situation meant nothing short of death. If we suddenly watched her leave, it would be the same as letting her die. As long as Auntie Eva was unwilling to stop, we would have no choice but to follow her. And while it may be cruel to say so, Uncle Kraus and Natsu were already dead, so there was nothing more we could do for them. In the end, we had no choice but to console Jessica and head for the mansion together. Fortunately, Jessica stood up. Perhaps she had been able to draw a line on her grief for the moment. But what had surfaced in its place was an expression like a demon.
私がこの手でぶっ殺して必ず敵を取ってやる。行こうぜバトラー。犯人を見つけたら邪魔をするなよ。私が絶対に殺す。
俺も親父たちの仇があるんだ。悪いが早いもん勝ちだぜ。
そうだな。ぶっ殺してやろうぜ。
And my words, Jessica finally seemed to feel like someone had sympathized with her emotions. She still had that dark expression, but I felt Jessica regaining some of her sanity. We took off, chasing after Auntie Eva. Through the rose garden, up the stone steps, running at full speed towards the mansion, whose large, intimidating shadow flashed in the lightning. With this, the epitaph murders had finished the 8th twilight. And now, on the 9th twilight, the witch will revive. None shall be left alive. I will most likely lose my life. But, at the very least, I wanted to burn the truth into my eyes. And that was the only thing motivating me to move at that moment. We were able to reunite with Auntie Eva, who was having trouble with the lock to the front door. It seemed that all the blood had risen to Auntie Eva's head. That was probably making her fingers clumsy. It seemed she couldn't even handle the simple task of inserting the key into the lock. Then, there was a faint sound. The sound of the door unlocking. Just as though it had awaited for all the survivors to reunite before opening. It seemed to me as though the malicious mansion was trying to swallow all of the remaining humans at once. And the stench that erupted outwards at the instant the door opened. Can it really be explained as just a smell? It wasn't just a charred smell from grandfather. I think it may also have contained something like regrets by so many dead, including our parents and all the servants. What did it mean as it billowed out, overwhelming us? Was the cry of the dead telling us not to enter? However, Auntie Eva didn't flinch at something like that, and we who had to chase after her were forced to step into the mansion, despite receiving that message.
ジョージジョージ、聞こえたら返事をしなさい。ジョージ。
Auntie Eva shouted at the top of her lungs. Considering the situation, it's probably far too optimistic to imagine that he's alive. When we also started following Auntie Eva's example, and calling George Aniki's name in loud voices, Auntie Eva found something and stopped walking. She was standing in front of the door to the parlor.
これは南條先生、ちょっと来てもらえるかしら。
何事ですかな。
I heard from the adults about the creepy magic circles that had been drawn on the doors, such as the one to the parlor. Creepy was the only word to describe that thing, which had been scrawled there with a deep red paint, reminiscent of blood, that slowly dripped down. However, it had supposedly been there since this morning. Wondering why Auntie Eva, who had seen it already, would think it odd now. Jessica and I stared at the door. Once more, it makes me wonder, like, what the deal is with these magic circles. Since we have been introduced to the brown tube interpretation, do these things even have any significance in regards to the human claim? Because when you think about it, we have seen the magic scenes happen, but it is when we discover the bodies when we notice these things. Like, up until this point, I have never been able to see anyone put these to good use in the magic claims, like in the magic scenes. Like, for example, the stakes were able to easily go through the door to Natsu's room in the previous game. Like, without any need for the magic circle, like from before, that we've seen before. Like, I don't know. Like, if we are to go with this, like, if we are to think about it, like, we are going back to earlier theories that I talked about, like, a long time ago. Are these magic circles drawn by a human killer to scare us? To make us think that a witch had done these murders? Or is there a message being conveyed with these? Like, it's still a mystery.
確かにこんな数字が書かれていた記憶はありません。
Like, it also makes me think of this. Like, we have seen the magic claims. However, there were situations when after the deaths happened in the magic claims, Ronoe was ordered to make the preparations. And then, right after that, we get to discover the bodies in a completely different state. As if after the magic claims happened, Ronoe is preparing the scenes for the human claims, which, if we are to talk about like two worlds happening at the same time in parallel, if we are to go with that kind of logic, it wouldn't really make sense for Ronoe to prepare the scene for the human claim. He could just leave it as is. So it kind of makes me question what the deal is with this supposed preparation that needs to be done after the magic scene happens. Like Beatrice, like Beato ordering Ronoe or the stakes to prepare not just the dead bodies, or I don't know, like prepare the locked rooms. Like, why? If we're talking about the human claim, the locked rooms will be created by the killer, not necessarily by Ronoe or anybody else of the magic side. Like, I don't know.
ええ、なかったわ。不気味な魔法文字みたいなのは書かれていたけど、数字は書かれていなかった。
Huh? Wait, what? Numbers? From what the two of them said, Only a magic circle had been here this morning. However, right now, there were 8 digits newly written in the upper part of the magic circle. Zero 7 1 5 1 1 2 9. I didn't know what it meant, but I didn't even want to imagine the thought process of whoever wrote this. Hello there. Well, this is new. Also, in comparison to the weirdly cryptic demon and like cryptic demonic symbolism, like behind the previous magic circles, this seems like more up my alley. Even though I have to wonder what it means. Like 11037? Well, there are 8 digits. One idea that pops into my head is that this could be a date. 07 15 11/29. The 7th month, July, day 15, year 11/29. Like, if that is the case, then that is a long gap in time in comparison to 1984. Like, did something happen in 11/29? That, or there is a different meaning to this. It was drawn with what was probably the same paint as the magic circle. But it had clearly been written very recently. The way it had dried and the condition of the color was completely different from the magic circle part.
どうせ魔法的な意味があるんだろうぜ。深く考えたって意味なんかあるわけもないさ。
And Jessica intentionally spat those words out in an attempt to wipe out how creepy it was.
魔法陣というものかもしれませんが、ある種の数字遊びに魔除けが宿るという考え方です。
Darn it. Like, do I have to dust off the Bible? Do I have to dust off the Bible for this one?
どの列を足しても同じ数字になるみたいなものを皆さんも見聞きしたことがおありでしょう。
That, or do I have to dust out the Goetia? The list of 72 demons. Cause we have 7, 15, 11, and 29. Or like maybe it is the number of the demon. Would that mean that... Wait, does that mean that there have been 4 demons around here? Or... I don't know.
あれは四角形の中に埋めた数字の話じゃなかった？これは横一列だもの。何の意味があるのかさっぱりだわ。多分ジェシカちゃんの言うのが正解よ。私たちが深く考えたところで意味なんか何もないわ。
Even though she said that, she probably suspected that it might actually mean something. Like, who could have written this anyway? Like, it makes me wonder. It entirely depends on who could be found as the killer. Like, the killer of Nazi, Kraus, and George. Okay, well, I have a theory. I have a theory here that I'm gonna announce. Which, again, it has the spotlight on Eva. Like, I'm thinking of this line of thought. George went missing by exiting the window. Eva notices this, so she decides to get the help of Natsuhi and Kraus to help her find George outside. Only that while doing so, Eva decides to kill Kraus and Nazi, because, again, the motive of the gold, and not wanting Kraus to get a hand of that. As for George's death, it can be possible that Eva found George in the parlor, and something happened for George to have ended up dead. And well, maybe that something might have to do with finding out that George went to see Shannon, and Eva finds out that they are in love with one another. Since we know that Eva is not fond of Shannon, ever becoming George's love partner, like maybe in a fit of rage, Eva ends up killing George. Maybe by accident. That, or we could go with the idea that Shannon was still alive, and Eva tried to kill Shannon, but when that happened, George went out of his way to protect Shannon, and thus George gets shot instead. Like, that could be it, however, that seems unlikely, because it has been confirmed in Red that Shannon died there. Like, she died before, so in that sense, the only thing I can think of is that Eva is going complete cuckoo and killed George because of that hidden love between him and Shannon. And thus, with all that, after everything that happened, Eva went back to the guest house, locked everything back up, and she acts as if she never went outside to begin with. Like, that is my theory. Same event can be applied if we replace Eva with Nanjo, although in that case, the motive is pretty unclear. Or it can be either Kraus or Nazi, the ones responsible for this. But in that case, not only do we need to have a motive, but the events might have happened differently in that case. I guess we shall see how things will go for now, because even with this, I'm not very confident in, especially because of how Eva is acting right now. That, and maybe it is similar to last times when I suspected Rosa, because this particular chess game certainly has Eva's fingerprints like all over the place, which makes her too easy for me to suspect, and well, because of that, I might fall into a trap. Like, it's not too far-fetched to think that Eva being the killer of all these people would be too easy to suspect. So maybe we can think of Eva as an accomplice, in similar fashion to how we thought of Rosa as an accomplice, whereas it was somebody else who did the murder in the second game. Same thing can be said over here. So yeah. Using an old receipt or something from inside her pocket, Auntie Eva definitely wrote that number down with a short ballpoint pen. Because an 8-digit number will probably be a little difficult to memorize, unless it has some kind of pattern.
This, 日にちとかな。
日にち？何の話？
いや、偶然だろうけどな。俺の誕生日7月15日なんだ。0715が7月15日を示すのかなって思ったら、1129もほら11月29日って読んだらちょうど語呂がいいかなって思ってよ。
Wow. Yeah, that might be another possibility. In which case, does this mean that this message was written to Balor specifically? And what does November 29th mean in that case?
なんでバトラーの誕生日がこんなとこに書いてあるんだよ。そして11月29日ってなんだよ。
俺が知りてえぜ。まあたまたまの偶然だろうけどな。そう考えたらなんだか不気味になっちまったぜ。11月29日が誰かの誕生日だったりとかするのか？うちの家族は違うぜ。親父もキリエさんもエンジェも違う。もちろん俺のお袋もだ。
心当たりがありませんが、金蔵さんの誕生日でも源氏さんの誕生日でもないはずだ。
うちの家族も違うわよ。ローザやマリアちゃんでもないわ。
うちの家族だって違うぜ。カノン君も違うし、シャノンも違う。私、使用人の人の誕生日にはちゃんとプレゼント渡してるからみんな知ってるけど、11月29日に誕生日の人間なんて知らないぜ。
Once we started imagining that the 8 digits, which we had thought were meaningless, were actually 2 dates written together, it really started to look that way. However, its true meaning may be something completely different, or there may be no meaning at all. Anyway, since we don't have any real clue, it's probably pointless to stand around here analyzing it. More important was the inside of the parlor. This morning, behind each of the doors with a magic circle drawn on them, there had been the body of a victim. And now that the number had been newly added to the door, what new thing had been added inside the parlor? When Auntie Eva tried to open it, she felt the resistance of the lock. She immediately took out a master key and put it in the keyhole. As soon as she opened the door, Auntie Eva let out a high-pitched scream and ran inside. That alone was enough to tell us what had happened inside the room. Dr. Nanja and I looked at each other, and I shook my head slightly as we entered the parlor.
Georgie! Georgie! しっかりして！ジョージ！南條先生、早く！
Jojaniki had fallen alongside Shanan-chan's body. His chest was stained bright red, and from his still opened eyes, all my condolences to Auntie Eva, but I couldn't pick up any signs of life. After moving to take his pulse, Dr. Nanja shook his head, wordlessly reporting that Jojaniki was dead. Brushing him aside, Auntie Eva once again crouched beside George Aniki and started crying at the top of her lungs. With this, Aniki's death, one thing had become certain. The murders would not be ending at the 8th twilight. The epitaph was going to be carried out in its complete form, including the 9th twilight, and none will be left alive. I'm really starting to lose the plot. For some reason, Auntie Eva's health, insane cries, and appearance actually made me cool down. Crestfallen and exhausted, I flopped onto the sofa and plunked my feet on top of the table. Maybe all these murders have paralyzed my heart. Instead of fright, the stronger emotion I'm feeling is one of complete confusion. Dad and Kirie-san have died, and starting with the servants, people have been killed off one by one. And at one hell of a pace too. I don't know what the time the first murder started, but I'd say we're probably being killed at a rate of about 1 person an hour. Surely feels like it is all going at the speed of sound. Or maybe one could say, at the speed of a golden witch. I mean, just like I said before, I have never encountered such a death rate to this extent before all of this. I mean, it sure is making me feel numb as well, after the first chess game. We believe that the boat will come for us around 9 tomorrow. There's still a full 12 hours until then. How many more sacrifices to the witch would there be for us to survive? With the 4 of us, one goes each hour, and won't last any longer than 4 hours. It's not clear anymore if it will even last until midnight tonight. Yesterday, after lunch, we came into this parlor, and about the time that the discussion had turned to the black tea that Auntie Rosa said she bought, we kids had started talking about going to take a walk. Maria was fooling around. Did Shana-chan bring us some cookies? She said that Kumasawa-san had baked them, or something. I'd probably have laughed my ass off if there had actually been a cooked mackerel one mixed in with them. That's right. I'll never hear Kumasawa-chan's mackerel jokes again, will I? Yeah. If I only remember stuff about Kumasawa-chan, that won't be fair to everyone else. Why did Dad and Kirie-san even go outside? It's not like we died from being without food for a day. So why did Gluttony get hold of them and make them go get the food? I bet it was my fearless dad who started complaining about being hungry. Kirie-san, you were supposed to be the brakes for my reckless dad. Why didn't you stop him? And what about your daughter Angie? She's only 6 years old. You weren't thinking of entrusting her to me, were you? At this point, it's doubtful that even I would be able to live this silent life.
やめなさい。こんな時に争ってどうするんですか。ジェシカさん、やめなさい。
Some kind of commotion was interrupting my thoughts. I looked up to see what it was, and saw that Jessica and Auntie Eva had started fighting each other at some point. No, maybe I should say that Jessica was grabbing at Auntie Eva.
エヴァおばさんが父さんたちを殺したんだ。他に説明がつかない。
何をバカなことを。あんたのお父さんたちなんか知るわけないでしょ。
ゲストハウスの1階にいたのは誰だよ。エヴァおばさんだ。1階のロビーには父さんと母さんと、そしてエヴァおばさんがいた。生き残ったのは誰だ。エヴァおばさんだけだ。どうして。あんたが犯人だからに決まってるじゃないか。父さんと母さんを殺して外へ運び出して白々しく鍵を閉めて魔女の仕業なんかを装いやがったんだ。
じゃあジョージはどうしていなくなったのよ。1階には降りてきてないのよ。じゃあ2階でいなくなったっていうの。2階には誰がいたのよ。あなたたちがいたんじゃない。あなたは知ってたんでしょ。ジョージがこっそりゲストハウスを抜け出すのを。それを自分は何も知らないような顔を抜け抜けと。あんたがジョージを止めててくれれば、ジョージは
やめなさいというのに。ジェシカさんはずっといとこ部屋にいました。そしてエヴァさんもずっと1階のロビーにいました。そして2人とも何も悪くない。ただ家族を失って悲しいだけなんです。犯人なんか誰もいない。どこにもいない。ただただ魔女のせいなだけなんです。だからお二人で憎み合うのはやめなさい。
The witch's fault, is it? I know and that's a good way to mediate things for now. Yeah. I finally understand the meaning of all the doors and windows having been locked from the inside, when 3 whole people have evacuated from the guest house. This is what they were after. Making us think the culprit was inside, and causing this ugly mutual hatred. It had to be the culprits. The witch's goal. But in that case, how had the culprit locked it from the outside? It's certainly true that the master key had been stolen when Dad's group was attacked. But the doors and windows to the guest house had been constructed so that you couldn't lock them from the outside no matter how hard you tried. So that master key shouldn't mean anything for the guest house locked room. Jessica and Auntie Eva were turning their sadness at losing their blood relatives into anger at the person in front of them. Dr. Nanjo was trying to step between them. And I sat haphazardly in the sofa, staring up at the ceiling, thinking about things that didn't even matter anymore, with a worn-out expression. I just couldn't believe that this was the same parlor that I had been so warm and pleasant midday yesterday. For just a short time before the typhoon hit. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. What happened? The sudden sound of a gunshot shook me out of my half-sleep trance. Smoke was rising out of the barrel of the gun Auntie Eva had. Eva? Don't tell me that you intentionally shot Jessica. Just like that. What the hell? Jessica was rolling around the floor, covering both her eyes. Auntie Eva and Dr. Nanjo were looking down at her, shocked.
大丈夫ですかジェシカさんジェシカさん
私のせいじゃないわよ。あんたがよせっていうのに突っかかってくるから。
おいおい、どうしたってんだ。何事なんだ。
Jessica had grabbed at Auntie Eva, and it had turned into a scuffle. They had then started fighting over the gun Auntie Eva had been holding, and some movement or other caused the trigger to be pulled. I didn't know the details about whether the bullet had grazed her or whether she had been burned by the discharge. But whatever the case, Jessica was covering both her eyes, screaming in pain and rolling around on the floor.
大丈夫落ち着いて大した怪我ではありませんぞ気をしっかり
God damn it. Poor thing. Alright, you know what, that's it. Give us the gun, Eva. You lost your privileges. Dr. Nanjo lent Jessica his shoulder, saying that he would tend to her in the servant room. The servant room in this mansion apparently had a bed and a first aid kit, and was able to function as an infirmary.
父さんと母さんの仇殺してやる殺してやる私じゃないわよ私じゃない
ジェシカさん傷に触りますからそれ以上騒がないでさあ使用人室に行きましょう
Jessica still continued to curse Auntie Eva as her parents' murderer. It seemed that Auntie Eva couldn't conceal her shock at the fact that she had pulled the trigger, even if it had been an accident.
私のせいじゃないわよあの子が掴みかかってきたからこんなことに私は殺してなんかないわよそれよりジョージは誰が殺したのそうよジョージは誰が殺したのよジョージジョージ私は悪くない私は悪くない
待てよエヴァおばさん一人になるな
I didn't know whether it was because Auntie Eva couldn't stand her mistake, or whether it was because she had lost herself to anger at the person who had killed her own son, or whether it was both of those all mixed together. In any case, she ran out into the corridor, yelling, fearful, and shouting. Great. Now everyone is splitting up here. Can't say that I'm surprised, but now we have to think fast. Like, either we follow Eva, or we go after Jessica and make sure that she's safe. Like, I want to see where Eva is going, but I certainly do not want to... Like, I certainly do not want us to leave Jessica behind, with just Dr. Nanjo. I was also worried about Jessica's condition. But anyway, right then, I couldn't leave Auntie Eva alone. Why would she go off on her own in this mansion, of all places? Is she suicidal? Dr. Nanjo took Jessica towards the servant room. I chased after Auntie Eva, dashing into the depths of the mansion. Ah! I do not want to leave Jessica alone with Nanjo though. Like, she could be in more danger if we leave. God damn it. After sitting Jessica on the servant room bed, Nanjo told her several times not to rub her eyes, and examine the affected area. The barrel had probably been near her eyes. There was a possibility that the flames from the discharge had damaged her corneas. There was no threat to her life, but it would probably be necessary to have a suitable doctor look at her as soon as humanly possible. Nanjo applied emergency first aid, covering the affected area with gauze and wrapping it with bandage. As a result, Jessica completely lost her field of vision.
いいですかな。傷が痛んだりうずいたりするでしょうが、絶対にかいたり揉んだりしてはなりませんぞ。明日になったらすぐに眼科の先生のところへ行きましょう。
あいつね、本当は私を殺すつもりだったんだ。ほんのちょっと角度が悪かったら今頃殺されてた。絶対にあいつを警察へ突き出してやる。